Oak Ridge National Laboratory is a science lab and museum in East Tennessee. The museum depicts when it was a base to the Secret of Manhattan Project, where some of the most deadliest weapons were created to turn the tide in the devastating World War II. It took many years, but finally America was able to succeed and win the war. In ancient times, philosophers were attempting to answer the questions they had about the natural world around them. They questioned what matter was made of and how things could be solid or liquid. However, one philosopher stood out in particular. His name was Democritus. He was known as the father of the atom for thinking that everything in the world was made out of minute particles he called atoms. He named his newly found discovery the atom from the Greek root word atomos, which means indivisible. Little did he know, atoms could be divided. This was proven when James Chadwick discovered the neutron in 1932. However, nuclear fission was never actually performed until 1934, when Enrico Fermi unintentionally created the world's first fission reaction, thinking it was a transuranic or radioactive element. These were big breakthroughs in scientific research, but it wasn't until scientists Otto Hahn, Lisa Meitner, and Fritz Strassmann performed their experiment that the mystery of nuclear fission started to unravel. Otto Hahn was a radiochemist and moved to Berlin, Germany after his college education at Marburg University. Along the way, he teamed up with Lisa Meitner and Fritz Strassmann. After years of working together, Meitner had to leave the country because Nazis were imprisoning anyone with Jewish ancestry. But while she was gone, Hahn and Strassmann discovered a new element called barium. After checking with Meitner, who calculated the discovery, she confirmed that the barium was a product of the decay from the uranium atom caused by shooting neutrons into the nucleus, which successfully created nuclear fission. Word of the recent discovery reached America within weeks. Niels Bohr was the one who relayed the information to Albert Einstein and urged him to do something about the situation. Einstein, being a long-life pacifist, opposed nuclear power being used as a highly destructive weapon. He wrote a letter to President Franklin D. Roosevelt stating that it would be in the best interest of the United States to research nuclear power. In the letter, Einstein said to the president, "This phenomenon would also lead to the construction of bombs, and it is conceivable, though much less certain, that extremely powerful bombs of a new type may thus be constructed." This meant that the discovery of nuclear fission could possibly be created into a powerful and dangerous bomb. Einstein also stated that because the Germans knew about nuclear power from Hahn, Meitner, and Strassmann, many in the scientific community, like Einstein, believed this knowledge posed a great threat to America and other countries. It took some time, but eventually Einstein was contacted by Leo Szilard, an American nuclear physicist. In response to Einstein's letter to the president, he told him to contact the Belgian ambassador that contains all the uranium ore in the Belgian Congo, which is necessary for the nuclear fission process. With Germany's acts of genocide increasing, the United States wanted to ensure that the uranium stay out of Nazi Germany's hands. President Harry Truman later described nuclear research as a race of discovery against the Germans. Some months later, Einstein wrote a second letter to the president, which got to him long after it was written. It showed that trying to organize research for nuclear power was ineffective. World War II started on September 1st, 1939, when Axis power Germany attacked Allied power Poland. On October 11th, 1939, the president was finally given the second letter and he arranged the Uranium Committee. Once again, progress stalled until December 6, 1941, the day before the bombing on Pearl Harbor, when a real full-scale project began for the atomic bomb. In August 1942, it was renamed the Manhattan Project. After some time, the pace of progress picked up and the physicists had ordered 40 tons of graphite and uranium to experiment with. They would stack piles of uranium and surround it by graphite. They needed a source of carbon, and the graphite was an excellent substitute. The carbon would slow down the neutrons as they were shot towards the uranium, and thereby increase the likelihood of it causing a reaction. If the reaction happened, the atoms would break apart, hit other atoms, and then break them apart, therefore causing a large chain reaction. Eventually, one of the many scientists working on this, Enrico Fermi, hit a breakthrough and was able to create the first self-sustaining reaction on December 2nd, 1942. It needed secret bases for these nuclear projects and experiments and chose various places, the most important being Oak Ridge, Tennessee. It was quite secluded from other larger cities, mostly being accessed by two railways and a nearby river. They did not have to worry about a lack of electricity to meet the large energy demands the plant would require, because the Tennessee Valley Authority was located there and regulated the electricity for the area. Oak Ridge was perfect for producing uranium and plutonium, which were both capable of creating a nuclear fission reaction. Oak Ridge was a very small town in East Tennessee, just west of Knoxville with no real foundations, but it transformed into a city practically overnight in order to accommodate the laboratory and the large workforce needed to run it. Around 60,000 acres were cleared out to build the plant, and many residents that already lived in the existing town were forced to leave their homes and relocate elsewhere. Oak Ridge wasn't just a facility for making nuclear weapons, it was where thousands and thousands of plant employees and their families called home. It had a total population of about 75,000. However, the city was so secretive it wasn't even on any Tennessee maps. The whole area was very secure. Only authorized personnel were allowed in and out of the city. Residents even had to wear a badge when they left their homes to venture about the town. Oak Ridge's motto was, "What you see here, what you do here, what you hear here, when you leave here, let it stay here." Most of the resources and 60% of all money generated in the small city of Oak Ridge was spent towards the Manhattan Project and its efforts to create the materials needed to make the atom bomb. The main goal of the Manhattan Project was to make a nuclear weapon to end World War II. The efforts of the Oak Ridge nuclear facility were at the center of the Manhattan Project, and its main focus was to refine uranium and plutonium for use in the making of the atom bomb. It took about 9 months, but they made a real working nuclear reactor on November 4th, 1943. In 1944, the progress that had been made at this point was a large step from where they had previously started. They were now ready to advance into smaller improvements and modifications. The bomb was constructed, tested, and ready to be deployed. Although a victory was needed to win the war, it was a devastating point for the Axis powers when we bombed Hiroshima, Japan on August 6, 1945 with a little boy, one of the atomic bombs made at Oak Ridge Laboratories. The bombing was carried out by Tibbets, who took off in the Enola Gray, a B-29 bomber ship at the Northfield Air Base. It was the first aircraft to drop a nuclear weapon. 3 days later, on August 9, 1945, another bomb was dropped on Nagasaki, Japan that was created with plutonium at the Clinton Laboratory Space. Both of these created widespread destruction, deaths, and injuries. The losses were sad, and even though people rejoiced over the triumphs of the war, many plant workers felt guilty and responsible for the lives lost. Soon after the war, however, scientists knowing the possibilities of nuclear bombs and energy protested that Congress put more power into civilian hands, so that there would not be any misuse or misjudgment in what nuclear energy was used for. This created the Atomic Energy Act of 1946, which in turn created the Atomic Energy Commission. This ensured that the government didn't have full control over nuclear power. Years later, people still talked about nuclear power and the bombings that followed. But then something else got the people's attention: the hydrogen bomb. A physicist named Edward Teller and the Atomic Energy Commissioner, Lewis Strauss, both wanted to create the hydrogen bomb, and they did so within years. The press raved about the newly found weapon, and even 5 years after the war, in 1950, there were still many debates and articles about how it should be controlled and what it could be used for. The power of one hydrogen bomb could demolish New York City or any big city easily, so scientists urged the AEC to keep it under lock and key. People were scared and nervous that Russia could obtain the same kind of weapon, since there were some cases of politicians spilling atomic secrets to them. Some even built bunkers under their houses in case civilians built their own bombs and became a threat. The discovery of nuclear power put America in a state of unevenness and panic for a while, and even now nuclear power reminds people of war and death. Over this long period of time, a lot had happened and much had been discovered. Nuclear fission was created, and in turn the nuclear bomb. People's reactions had turned from seeing America as a small new country to a powerful stronghold. More and more weapon ideas were being considered. Other countries started to attempt in copying our bomb, and so on. This historical turning point couldn't have succeeded if not for Oak Ridge. Most of the history of the Manhattan Project happened on those lands. Now, there were still countries trying to obtain nuclear weapons. As of February 2013, North Korea had detonated its third practice nuclear weapon. We all, though, are continuing in our research to make nuclear fission safer and less toxic to our environment. Improvements can always be made, but the progress that we have made since then is tremendous. This turning point in history acted as a reactor. When one thing happened, it triggered a chain reaction.